Hi there, I'm Vincent Bos and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing when your ex will start missing you. The Get Your Ex Back countdown from a life coach. I provide audio coaching for breakup recovery, trying to get an ex back, attracting someone new, and life coaching. Visit www.dateme.tips for more details. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. So now let's get back into today's podcast, and today we are discussing when your ex will start missing you. The Get Your Ex Back countdown from a life coach. So if you have been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, you need your ex to miss you. But when will this likely start to happen? In today's podcast, I'll be giving 3 milestones to count down from to understand when your ex most likely misses you and opening the door to getting your ex back. So let's get straight into this, and countdown number 3 is your breakup was months ago. Now when people email me, when people type in my comments, I often see people suggest the theory of 30 days being a good rule of thumb of when they can expect to try and get their ex back. Now, unfortunately, from my research, that couldn't be further from the truth. Now, I can only assume that this is due to the fact that some people promote a concept and a theory of something referred to as the 30-day no contact rule, with the principle being that after 30 days, you stand a good chance of getting your ex back. Now, from my research, that is completely untrue. Now, of course, you're always going to get exceptions to the rule. You're always going to get the odd random example. However, by and large, when I look at what I've researched, I see most dumpers reaching out to dumpees in and around the 6-month mark. You may even actually say the 6 to 9 month mark seems to be somewhat of an average of what I see dumpers reaching out to dumpees, and therefore an opportunity of reconnecting with your ex. So what we can see instantly when we consider this is that 1 month or 30 days is very unlikely to be enough to reconnect with your ex. So when we're looking at milestones, when we're looking at a countdown of when you can try to get your ex back in a realistic sense, I would say that you first of all need to check how long has it been since you were dumped. Now, you might not want to think about that horrible day when your breakup took place, but I'm also sure that in your mind, you've been keeping a tally of this anyway. You know, most dumpees know almost to the minute of how long ago it was that they were sadly dumped and their relationship ended. So you will know instantaneously how long your breakup took place. And if it was just a few days or weeks ago, I would say that is not a milestone to really believe you stand a good chance of getting your ex back, because from everything that I've researched, you're looking at many, many months. Like I said, maybe 6 to 9 months on average, certainly more than 30 days, certainly more than 1 month. Now, this doesn't mean that you're not going to find that random person who gets success. Maybe your friend did. Maybe you read somebody in the comments who found success within a few days or weeks. But it's not the general rule, so I would suggest when we're looking for that milestone, you're actually almost wanting it to be a number of months post-breakup, because that allows your ex, the dumper, to have come through the single honeymoon period. Now, this is a period of time that somebody will enter once they end a relationship. It's where they do the things that they wanted to do but felt they couldn't within your relationship. It's what somebody does when they become freshly single. And I believe this lasts roughly 6 to 12 months. This is what I see as a general single honeymoon period of time. Now, in my opinion, a dumper won't want to reconnect with a dumpee until they've gone beyond and through this single honeymoon period. So you need your ex to have entered this, gone through this, experienced it, and come out the other side. If you are thinking to yourself, well, I was dumped 3 weeks ago, what's the chances of me getting my ex back? I would suggest right now, quite slim, because your ex-dumper needs to live life as a single person and explore and experience, and then ultimately understand, hopefully, that their life isn't as fulfilling without you. Okay, and therefore that is when we're going to self-reflect and consider that they've made an error of judgment and that they want to reconnect. But if they believe that their life isn't as fulfilling without you, they're going to want to get back within a connection with you. Now, if and when this happens, if your ex-dumper reaches out to you, this doesn't mean as a dumpee, you should just jump to it and automatically agree to get back with your ex, even if you feel it right now. What I would say to you is if and when this does take place, and it could be many, many months down the line, please consider your own life position at that point. Please consider whether your ex-dumper is the right person for you at that point. You might feel they are now, but the breakup is likely fresh in your mind. The pain is sadly within your mindset 24/7. But if and when your ex reaches out to you, please consider your position there and then. Because you may have moved to a different point in your recovery. If you have recovered to the stage of where you're open to consider new dating options, then if your ex-dumper reaches out to you, you really need to think about and consider, are they the right person for me right now? Okay, so these are all things for you to think about if and when it takes place. But when we're looking at milestones, when we're doing a countdown of how and when you're likely to get your ex back because they are missing you, well, first of all, they need to go through a single honeymoon period, because until they do so, they're not even going to self-reflect. And they can only miss you when they're thinking about you. So for them to think about you, to miss you, and hopefully to becoming one step closer to you reconnecting, we first of all need to make sure your breakup was months ago. So now let's get into the second point of today's podcast. Please like this video if you're watching on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. And countdown 2 is your ex is watching you. So we've had 3, we're now on 2, and this is that your ex is watching you. And what I'm speaking about here is not from a stalker's perspective. Okay, that wouldn't be good no matter whether you want your ex back or not. You certainly don't want somebody to be stalking you in that kind of creepy way. But what I'm speaking of mainly here is social media. Let's just say, for instance, that all of a sudden your ex-dumper is now viewing your stories that you've uploaded. Now, this is a clear sign that they're thinking about you. Somebody isn't going to view a story if they're not thinking about you. First of all, they've got to actually select to view your story, which shows a decision they've made to wonder what you're up to. And then when they've actually seen what you've uploaded, that is, of course, going to flood their mind with what you're doing, how you're looking, your life right now, and all of those things which are hopefully going to start reeling your ex in to reconnection. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Somebody doesn't deliberately have to click a story necessarily. They might have watched somebody else's story and it automatically then played yours. That is true on a number of online platforms. However, if we're considering how often your ex is viewing your story, that is when we can really start to see if there is a pattern emerging. If your ex-dumper views one story once, ever, and never again, then maybe it was an accident. However, if they're viewing your stories consecutively, I don't think this is likely to be a mistake. I don't think it's likely to be an accident. I think it's more likely to be that they're deliberately wanting to view your story. Now, if you're somebody who doesn't post stories, but you do upload other things online, if you can see some type of evidence regarding your ex viewing a post or a photo, whatever it may be, then that also counts as well. Maybe they've given it a like, as simple as that. Maybe there are other ways that your ex-dumper has viewed something. It could even be something such as a Spotify playlist if you are sharing an account or whatever it may be. There are other ways to notice if your ex-dumper is paying attention to what you're uploading and what you're doing. Okay, I can't list them all, but use your common sense, consider your position and what you're doing, and then you will know if they are actively, quote-unquote, watching you, looking at what you're uploading, noticing what you're doing online. This is always a great sign and an important part of our countdown, because if they're watching you, if they're viewing what you're doing, then not only are they thinking of you to actually take that action, as I said earlier, but then after they have taken that action, they are likely thinking of you even more. And that's why it's so important that you post positive things online. Whether it's a story, whether it's a photo, whatever it may be, make sure you post positive things. Whether that's a positive song rather than sad song lyrics, whether this is a photo of you looking great rather than you looking sad and unhealthy, whether this is you talking about ambitious, confident, important goals you have for the future rather than you talking about how sad your life is. It's so important you paint a positive picture of yourself. Now, I'm not saying you should be lying. I'm just saying paint the best picture of yourself. There is a big difference. Don't make things up. Don't lie, but just showcase yourself in the best light. Because if and when they do watch you, this is when you can really start to reel them in, attract them further, and bring them even closer to you to hopefully get that reconnection that you crave. Now, if you would like advice and support about how to try and increase the chance of one day getting your ex back, then you may want to consider my audio coaching service, where me and you can speak one-on-one about your unique specific situation. Go to my website www.dateme.tips for more information about how I can become your coach and your teammate via my audio coaching service. So now let's get into point number 3 and the third and final point of today's podcast, and this is countdown number 1, and that is your ex is asking about you. So we've had 3, we've had 2, this is 1, and this is often the final milestone before a dumper will make that leap of faith to reach out to you, and that is that they're asking about you. Now, it's important for me to say before I really focus in on this final point today, but not everybody is going to have the same situation where all of these milestones are even possible. For instance, if you don't have a social media account, then what we spoke about in point number 2 is not going to be as likely for you to notice. That doesn't mean you can't get your ex back. Similarly, here in countdown point number 1, the final thing we're speaking about today, the big milestone you could say, which is your ex is asking about you. Well, if you don't have mutual friends, you're not going to actually be able to find out that they're thinking, wondering, and wanting to ask about you. So this doesn't mean you can't get your ex back if there's none of this matching your situation. This is why I speak about my audio coaching service, because that can be me and you speaking about your situation and the specifics of it, rather than the generalized advice I have to give in my podcast. But if you do have mutual friends, then if you find out your ex is asking about you, and this is combined with the other milestones, so this isn't asking about you a few days after they dumped you, that would be somewhat natural of them making sure you're okay. I'm talking about months down the line. I'm talking about 6, 9, 12 months down the line, you randomly find out from a mutual friend that your ex-dumper is asking about you. And maybe that comes not long after you noticed when viewing your story. This is a wonderful sign and a big milestone of the level of thought that your ex-dumper is now giving you. Now, at the time of the breakup, sadly they were feeling a very low level of romantic emotional attraction towards you. They will only want to reconnect if this level of attraction reaches the necessary high point. And we can view this high point as them showing more and more interest via the intrigue you are reeling them in with. And therefore, if they're asking about you, this is often one step removed from them reaching out to you. So this is why we've been doing it as a countdown. 3, 2, this is 1, and beyond 1 would be your ex-dumper hopefully sending you that text, maybe even phoning you up, giving you a call, although that is less likely than a type of message. Ultimately, if you find out your ex is asking about you, you need to really consider 2 important subpoints here. Firstly, you need to make sure that you are conveying yourself to your mutual friend in the best way that you can, because if your ex is asking about you, your mutual friend might be asking you a question almost on their behalf, and you need to make sure you give them an answer which is attractive. But secondly here, really bear in mind how this interaction has taken place. Your mutual friend has told you that your ex-dumper is speaking and asking questions about you. Now what this shows is that your mutual friend really is acting as a go-between. So this means if anything they say is going back to you, then anything you say is going back to them. And I don't mean necessarily things that you're telling your mutual friend to pass on. Maybe your ex-dumper asked your mutual friend to ask you a question, you've responded. Okay, that is kind of obvious that your mutual friend is going to pass that back. No, I'm talking about in general. I'm talking about when your ex-dumper isn't even mentioned and you're talking about your life. This is also likely to go to your ex via your mutual friend. So be very, very careful about what you speak about to a mutual friend. Yes, you need to release your emotion. Yes, you need to speak to people. But if you're feeling low, if you're feeling sad, if you want to talk about negative topics, don't do it with a mutual friend. Do it with a friend or family member that's not connected with your ex. Do it with a local doctor. Maybe you want to speak with me one-on-one via audio coaching. Whatever you do, don't speak to a mutual friend. Because if you convey yourself in a negative light, this will also get back to your ex. Even if you tell them not to, even if they say they won't, it likely will. And therefore, your ex-dumper is unlikely to grow that attraction if you are seeming negative due to how your mutual friend is portraying you to your ex. So always make sure you behave appropriately with mutual friends. But that's the countdown. 3, 2, 1. Your ex is asking about you. Therefore, they're thinking about you. Therefore, they should be moving to the point of missing you. And at that stage, hopefully, they will reach out to you. If you believe that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description.